Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to Bookmas Day 9. Today we are going to be doing our end of the year book tag. I find book tags to be one of the most fun ways to wrap up a reading year. So we're gonna get straight into it. We're gonna be very mobile for this video. Whenever I do book tag videos, I don't know, I love to do them scavenger hunt style where we just like run around the room and pick up books off the shelves. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna keep things exciting. So for this particular set of book tags, I'm pretty sure Destiny was the original creator. So thank you, Destiny, for the inspiration for this book tag video. Let's just get straight into it. We're starting off with a bit of a negative tag. So most disappointing book of the year. Let's see. I think you, unfortunately. And okay, I've grabbed two for this one. So this tag I also had in my mid-year book freakout tag. So I decided to choose books, obviously, that I didn't choose for the mid-year freakout tag for the same prompt. But one of my most disappointing reads of the year has to be 28 Summers by Elin Hilderbrand. I was very disappointed in reading this, obviously, because Elin Hilderbrand is an author that, you know, I've read a lot of her books in the past. I've had some hits, I've had some misses, but I have never had a miss as hard as this one with her. The premise of the story was just not it for me. There's a lot of cheating, there's a lot of infidelity in this one, and like I don't mind a story about infidelity as long as it's done right, you know, like the cheating isn't romanticized, but I feel like this entire book was just our characters trying to justify their cheating, and it just rubbed me the wrong way. So I really did not love this book, 28 Summers by Elin Hilderbrand. I still liked the writing in it. There were some like nostalgic summer Nantucket feelings, but yeah, the story and the characters were just honestly horrible. And then the second one I picked for this prompt is actually one that I recently read for a Bookmas reading vlog, but unfortunately, The Everlasting by Alix E. Harrow. I don't think this is a bad book by any means. I think the writing in this book was absolutely beautiful. I think a lot of people would also probably enjoy the story, but there was just something about this that did not work with me, and I'm so disappointed because I thought this was gonna be like a 5-star, 6-star read, and it ended up being like a 2.75. So like not the worst book in the world. I still like, there were parts of it that I enjoyed. Again, like the writing was absolutely stunning. It was so beautiful, but there was a romance plot line in this book that I just did not understand at all. For me, it felt like an idolization, a fascination type of a connection versus an actual like developed romance. And I think this had the Our Infinite Fates effect on me, where our story is structured around a set of like a bunch of different loops where we're sort of like going through the same situation over and over and over again, and I would just have preferred fewer loops but more time spent in each loop. And if you've read this book, you know what I mean by that. So yeah, two disappointing books for me, sadly. I honestly probably wouldn't even recommend 28 Summers to anyone, but I still would recommend The Everlasting to probably everyone. I am very much in the minority of not completely loving this book, so if this is on your TBR, if you're interested, I would still say definitely read it. Something just didn't work for me. Okay, moving on to something a little bit more positive. Our second tag is What Was an Underdog book? So where is it? There she is. The Poet Empress by Shen. This is a debut fantasy that's coming out actually in January, and I was very lucky to receive an ARC copy of this. But this is definitely an underdog book for me. I mean, we have a debut author here, so like that's already underdog vibes there. This was so beautifully written. It's one of those books that like when you read it, you can't believe it's a debut novel. It's like, how is this your first book that you've ever published? But this is a standalone historical fantasy, and we follow an unassuming protagonist who becomes a concubine to a very cruel heir, like the crown prince. So she has to start learning how to navigate all of these court politics, these concubine politics. She has to deal with her very brutal, very cruel like person that she's committed herself to. And she also has to try and learn poetry magic to try and take this kingdom down from within. And it's such a good character-driven story. Like if you're looking for something that will really deep dive into complex characters and will have you second guessing everything and everyone, definitely read this one. Next is an overhyped book that I read. I'm sorry in advance for this one, but it has to be Alchemized. It has to be Alchemized. Okay, here's the thing. I didn't hate this book. I gave it a 4-star. I think it was a very, very, very solid book, but I think this one definitely felt overhyped for me because on social media, like every single reaction I saw to reading this book was just people like sobbing their eyes out, bawling, saying this was a 6-star read. And I totally get that everyone reads books differently. Different books resonate with everyone differently. And so I don't think any of those reactions were like, you know, not warranted. I think I just expected to emotionally connect to these characters and the story a lot more than I did. It just didn't happen for me. I do think the writing in this book is very, very strong, but yeah, I was expecting like top tier favorite book of the year going into this. And although I did enjoy a lot of this book, it just wasn't like god tier, like how everyone else was hyping it up to be. Next tag is a book that surprised me. And this. Okay, we've grabbed 2. The first is The Rebel and the Rose by Katherine Doyle. This is a sequel in a YA romantasy trilogy and surprised me in different ways. So first of all, this one surprised me because I thought this series was a duology, and so I thought this was going to be the conclusion to the series. And when I read the last page, I realized there was no way that this was just a duology. And then so I learned that like over the process of writing this book, this series was intended originally to be a duology, but as the book was being written, the author and her team, I guess, just decided, no, this should be a trilogy. We can't wrap it up in a duology. And so that happened, and that surprised me. But on top of that, I also was really surprised at how much we expanded in this world. I think with a lot of romantasies these days, I generally expect just more emphasis on the romance part of the plot. And then the fantasy side just, I don't know, gets tossed aside for other priorities. So while reading this, I was really, really surprised at how much we explored like other lands in this fantasy world. We definitely did a lot of exploration, adventure, learning a lot about the lore and more about the magic in this world. And I had a lot of fun reading this one. If you are looking for a romantasy series that scratches that romantasy itch, like gives you everything you want in a romantasy, but also provides a little bit more fantasy and also feels just more exciting and creative, I would definitely recommend. So the first book is The Dagger and the Flame, and the second is The Rebel and the Rose. And I'm hoping the third book comes out next year. Hopefully. And then the other book I picked for a surprise book was Recursion by Blake Crouch. This was the year where I got into sci-fi. I definitely am not a sci-fi expert by any means. I've only really just dabbled into the genre, but this was the one that really changed the course for me. I think prior to this one, the last like sci-fi, like fully sci-fi book I read, I'm pretty sure was like Ready Player One. And that was like 10 years ago. I don't know, I think I've just been so into fantasy that I just wrote off sci-fi as a genre. I just convinced myself I would not love sci-fi. But after diving into this one, I was like, oh, this is sci-fi done right. This is so good. This one made me feel anxious the entire time while reading it. I tend to compare this to something like Inception because it gives you that feeling of like you're trapped under all of these layers of things. And as you keep going, you just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into this mess. I could not look away. It was such an addictive read that just like captured my entire energy, time, soul while reading it. So this was so good. Recursion by Blake Crouch definitely surprised for me and really kickstarted my interest into exploring more sci-fi. Next up is my favorite book couple of the year. Okay, them easily, them very unexpected, and let's go them. Okay, I have my 3. This first one, I can't even really tell you the couple that is my favorite because I fear it would spoil things because this is the second book in a series, but Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson very surprisingly had one of my favorite subplots of romance that I have ever read. And it's one of those books that gives you literally just the crumbs of the romance subplot. You really don't get much, but when I tell you I was giggling, I was kicking my feet, I was blushing, it was so unexpected. I can't really tell you who the couple is, because if you haven't read this series, I feel like it would be spoiling a lot of things that happen like in book 1 and then in this book prior to these two kind of coming together. But they have easily and quickly shot up to like my top list of couples. I'm obsessed with them, and I would never have expected something like this coming from Brandon Sanderson. Next up, I can actually say their names, but Matilda and Vincent from Wild Reverence. Another fantasy with like the most wonderful romance subplot. This one truly felt like our characters were just destined to be together, literally fated by the stars. Like I'm obsessed with them. I think these two characters just fit perfectly together. It's one of those romances that like, it doesn't feel typical. You don't get a meet cute and a romance development build up and then a third act breakup and then whatever. It's just like these two see each other, they meet each other, and you know that they belong together. You don't even need to see a lot of it happen on page. The way their two characters were just written as individuals to fit together in this most perfect, like harmonious way, that is how I can describe Matilda and Vincent, and I'm obsessed with them. And then I felt like I had to actually like pull something from contemporary romance for this tag. So The Bodyguard by Katherine Center. I really loved Hannah and Jack. I think they fit together very well. They were just like perfect for helping each other. And I found in this past year that is like one of my favorite things to read in adult romance, is reading about two characters that equally contribute to each other's healing and growth. Like when the two characters are both suffering from different issues, but also issues where they can kind of relate to each other in a way. And then when they get together, they really help fill those holes and help them like out of their funk, but like in an equal, balanced way. I love that. And that's what Hannah and Jack did for each other. So yeah, I really enjoy this couple. Continuing on with the characters theme, our next prompt is favorite main character. This one is a bit of a tough one for me. Favorite main character of the year. I don't really know why these two are jumping out at me right now, but another Brandon Sanderson from the same series, Stormlight Archive, but The Way of Kings. I love Kaladin so much, and his arc in this book was incredible. Like the emotions he was feeling and the way he came out of it. He was definitely the hero of the story. Even though this is a multi-POV book, Kaladin was like the star of the show in The Way of Kings, and I felt so attached to him. I also really loved how he put together kind of his own found family in a way, and the dynamic with him and his like found crew of people was just so touching to read. And the way we saw how like certain things that happened to his past affected his development into like the character he is today was absolutely wonderful. So Kaladin from The Way of Kings definitely will stick with me for a long time. And then another sort of unexpected one, but Grace, Ryland Grace from Project Hail Mary, I found to be such a refreshing main protagonist to read about, because he's stuck in this like really, you know, not a good situation. He's stuck on a spaceship by himself, like, and he doesn't know what's going on around him. So like a pretty stressful situation, but the way he managed to keep the sense of humor throughout the entire book, throughout the entire story, was just so wonderful to read. Like it made the book so entertaining. He's very sassy, and like being in his mind was just, I don't know, it was so much fun. So yeah, I don't know, these are the two characters that just popped up in my head. Okay, I think I'm gonna have a lot for this next prompt, because this next prompt is favorite secondary character of the year, and I can't pick just one, because if there's something that I realized about myself this year is that I love a secondary character. I love side characters. Like usually I feel like when I'm reading a book, the protagonist, I don't care as much about. I feel like when I really love a book, it's because of the side characters. Maybe that's just like the found family lover in me, but I am a secondary character girl. So we need to include Severo in this list, okay? In Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star, Severo has just shot up to the top of my list of like favorite characters of all time. He is just so unhinged, but at the same time, you can always tell that he truly cares. Like he's such a passionate person. He feels things so deeply, but he also just has this wild side. And I felt so anxious reading his story in this book, especially. There were so many moments that made me like, I am not okay. But yeah, Severo, incredible. And also this series in general has so many wonderful side characters that all outshine Darrow as the protagonist, and Severo was just like top tier out of all of them. We also need to talk about Andon Emery Andin from the Greenbone saga. I'm holding up Jade Legacy to represent the entire series, but truly his arc throughout all three of the books, Jade City, Jade War, Jade Legacy, incredible. I think Andin was probably my favorite part of this world in general, and he just deserves everything. And I think in general, just every single character in the series was so wonderful. At the start, like during Jade City, when you first get introduced to all these characters, I was thinking like, oh, everyone, like I can tell what everyone's arcs are going to be from like just the stereotypes, the archetypes of like this type of character. And then Fonda Lee managed to surprise me with every single character's arc. Like once you dove a little bit deeper into everyone, you really saw the complexities of every single character, and their arcs just went in a complete different direction than what I expected. So highly recommend the series. I think this is another world that is just filled with so many wonderful, complex, different types of characters. So this was wonderful. Oh my gosh, and we have to talk about Benji. We have to talk about Benji. Again, I'm just holding Us Against You as a placeholder for like the entire Beartown trilogy, but Benji stole my heart in this series. I think, yeah, to this day, he is one of my favorite characters of all time. I think I'm seeing a trend with kind of like Severo, Andin, Benji. I think they all kind of go through similar struggles, but in very different ways. And so I'm definitely seeing a type actually as I'm going through this prompt. I'm like, there's something similar with all of these characters that I'm loving. But yeah, Benji just stole my heart. Again, just another character that you think you know when you first meet them, but then they end up surprising you and they just like dig deep into your gut, into your heart. And I've talked about the series so many times, but yeah, Benji. I feel like I have to do one more. I told you, I just love side characters. Where is it? We have to do, I'm gonna pick up The Gilded Cage by Lynette Noni. This is to represent the entire Prison Healer trilogy, but The Gilded Cage, this is the second book in the series. This is the one where I fell in love with Keldon as a character, so this is the book that defined him for me. But he is this wonderful brotherly character to our protagonist, and I don't know how much I can say again because this is the second book in a series, so I don't want to spoil any plot points, but I feel like his arc was also surprising because this series could have very easily set up like one of those really annoying love triangles with brothers, and I'm so happy that Lynette Noni didn't go there, and I'm so happy that the brother stayed a brother. But that's all I'll say about that. Keldon is like one of those characters, if you loved like a Nikolai type like in the Grishaverse, or if you loved Luke from Shades of Magic, like the kind of character that pokes fun at things and is kind of like snarky and sassy, but at the same time so caring. That's Keldon, and I think you would love him if you love that type of a character. Okay, next tag is new favorite author you discovered this year. I mean, I think I'm just gonna grab Beartown because it's most easily accessible. I think this one's very obvious. I discovered Fredrik Backman this year, and I have already read 6 books from him just in this past year. Like I very quickly just did a binge of a lot of Fredrik Backman books, but I love the way Fredrik Backman just dives so deep into different characters that are all unique, but also feel like someone you could know in real life. I don't know how he's done it. I feel like he just sits and like people watches. I don't know how else he would be able to know these different types of humans on such a deep level. Like he must just sit and watch and study humans in his free time, because the way he writes about the human experience seems like it just feels so genuine. It feels very blunt, where he will loop you around in circles. He'll take you on this roller coaster of thoughts and emotions and spirals, and then he'll just like plant this like final sentence after this big rant, and it will just sit so deeply, and that's the way he speaks to my soul. And then for this other one, this might be a little bit early to say this, but I have really high hopes for Marie Lu. I can't believe I have not read a Marie Lu book before this year, but I very recently read Red City in the month of November, and even though this is the first and only book I've read from this author, I can already tell that she is going to like rise up in the ranks of my favorite authors. Like, you know, when you just know. I think there were a lot of parts of her writing that really reminded me of V. Schwab writing, and that's why I just immediately trust her so much, because V. Schwab is like one of my top 3 like I don't know, god tier Trinity authors. She writes villain characters very well, similar to V.E. Schwab, and she writes very complex characters very well, and I just could not look away from this book. I absolutely adored it, and one of my goals for 2026 is to definitely get through more of Marie Lu's backlist. I'm so excited to read more of her. Next up, happiest book I read this year. Okay, this one might be a little tough because, as you guys know, I like to read a lot of sad books. I think this award goes to Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. This just made me feel so like comfortable and safe and happy, and I think it definitely had to do with the whole musical element to this. So this is of course another magical realism romance, but this one truly felt like a musical in a book. The whole idea of this is that our protagonist starts hearing like an unfinished song in her head, and along with that song comes a voice. So she starts having this conversation with this guy that she doesn't know, but like through like just voices in each other's heads, and they both hear this unfinished song and they realize they have to somehow like finish the song to get it out of their head and to fix their problems. And it just felt like a literal musical, and I am such a musical nerd. Like, I love musicals so much, and I always feel safe in musicals because yes, there can be some sad, traumatizing musicals, but for the most part, musicals will have a happy ending, other than exceptions. I'm thinking of Les Mis right now in my head, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that made me sob. But for the most part, you know, like that cozy, safe, happy feeling that you feel when you watch a musical, that is literally what I felt while reading this book. So definitely a happy book. I mean, just look at it. It's like bright pink and blue and yellow with like musical notes and like a couple in the front. Does this not look like the happiest book ever? I really, really enjoyed this book. Made me feel safe, made me feel happy. Okay, next up, what was the most frustrating book that I read this year? Oh, I think if you know me, you can guess this one. I just need to find it on my shelf. Where the heck did I put you? Literally, where did I put this book? Hello? Oh, it was at the bottom of my shelf. So, Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. I was so mad. I was so mad reading the end of this one. My reaction was caught in live time in a reading vlog. When was it? It was a couple months ago. What was the theme of the reading vlog? I can't remember, but there was a reading vlog maybe in October where I read this romantasy. There's a plot twist at the end of this book that just, to me, it just erased all of the progress that we made throughout the story, and it was actually a story that I was enjoying. A big portion of this book is dedicated to this sort of seafaring adventure, and I was having so much fun, like being on the seas. There's just something so fun about that type of an exploration adventure in a fantasy, and so I was having fun reading this. Was it the perfect book? No, but I was having fun, and then I feel like by the end of the book, we just erased all of the character development that we did throughout the entire book, like in one sentence or like in one page. We just undid all of that, and I was so frustrated at it. I'm still mad thinking about it to this day. Definitely felt very frustrated with this one. Next tag, what is the longest book I read this year? This is one I have already talked about in this tag, but Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson has to be the longest book I have read ever, I think, in all of my life. This copy that I have is 1,310 pages long. Definitely the longest book I've ever read, but I'm gonna be completely honest, did not feel that long. Like, I have been so surprised reading these books because yes, there are a lot of pages, but they fly through really quickly. For some reason, the Stormlight Archive to me flies quicker than even like Mistborn by the same author. I just feel like I get so captured in these stories, and they read quite quickly. Like, Brandon Sanderson's writing is quite simple, I would say, so it's very easy to just like breeze through his books very quickly. So even if the word count is high, it doesn't feel that long. And then on the other side, shortest book I read this year, I think it has to be this. This is Maggie or A Man and a Woman Walk into a Bar by Katie Yee. This is a literary fiction, and this is, how long is this? 194 pages. I honestly didn't love this book. This is a story about a divorce, and I just feel like our protagonist didn't really do anything about it. This book really was just a stream of consciousness of the thoughts in her mind, but a lot of her thoughts I feel like weren't even about the divorce. Like there were just a lot of random elements thrown into this book that, yeah, I didn't really connect to this book very much, but it was a very short read. Okay, this next one's a really fun one for me. So best covers or prettiest covers of the year. I'm gonna try to limit this one to like 3 or 4 because I love a pretty cover, okay? First up, I mean like this beauty. Dawn of the Firebird by Sarah Magal Rana. I think honestly one of like the prettiest books I own, and not even a sprayed edge edition, you know what I mean? Like it's just the cover is so pretty itself. This is a high fantasy for fans of like the Poppy War, the Will of the Many, but also filled with so much culture, and this book just felt so rich to read. It's a very like lore heavy book, but yeah, on top of that, the cover is just so gorgeous. And this is an art copy, which is why the edges and everything look plain, but if you look up the actual released, like the deluxe edition or whatever that was just recently released, this book also has like the most gorgeous stenciled sprayed edges. And then speaking of deluxe editions, my copy of Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, like this is just such a cool cover. First and foremost, I think that design is genius and really suits the book very well. But then not only that, I did get the like special tour edition or whatever. So we have this gorgeous, very, very detailed stenciled sprayed edge. Our end papers and everything are just so cool. Under the dust jacket as well is very, very cool. And then just because I feel like I need to show off, this is also a signed copy with a special tour stamp on there. And then should we do one more? Should we do one more? I want to do Shark Heart, which is right there, but I have a feeling, I can't remember, but I have a feeling I did Shark Heart for prettiest cover in my mid-year book tag. So let's find something else. Oh, you know what? Violet Thistlethwaite is Not a Villain Anymore by Emily Krempholz. This cover is so cute. I bought this book solely for the cover. We have a dragon blowing not fire, but flowers. We just have flowers everywhere in general. I love like the fade, like the kind of ombre effect or gradient. We have this like vine plant, which if you've read the book, you know that this is probably the stabby plant companion that we read about in the book. We have our characters on it, obviously, and this like greenhouse over here. I just love how all of the components to this cover fit together. I think it's so cute. This cover makes me so happy. So happy. Next tag is book that I have not stopped thinking about. Okay, now is when I'm gonna grab Shark Heart, which yes, does also have a very stunning cover. This book was just so different to anything I had ever read before, because not only is the premise of this book just so interesting, like if you don't know the premise, we follow a married couple and the husband starts turning into a shark, which in this world is kind of a normal thing that happens. It's not normal, but it's normal enough that it's just like it has a name. It's sort of like an illness that you can get. And it's not a fantasy. It's not like we don't take a magical route of like, oh, he's becoming like a shark superhero kind of a character. No, we don't do that. We don't have shark powers. He is literally just turning into a great white shark. And we follow him as he starts kind of like giving into this feral side. Like, yes, he gets impacted physically. Like he starts, I don't know, his bones start changing, his skin starts changing. He starts like eating a lot more and different types of foods and all that kind of thing. But he also like starts losing his mind and like giving into this feral side of him. So we follow him and then also his wife, as his wife has to deal with accepting the fact that she's going to have to let go of her husband as he turns into a shark. And so I think we explore a lot of like what it is to love someone, but also needing to let them go. And it just showed such a different side of being a human and feeling human emotions in this kind of bizarre alternate universe. I feel like this is something that like every time you read and reread, you'll get something different out of it. It was just so good. I could rave about this book forever, but Shark Heart by Emily Haybeck. Okay, we're going on to the other side of the spectrum. We're going to talk about the cringiest book I have read this year. I am so sorry about this. This needs to go to Silver Elite by Dani Francis. I honestly wanted to enjoy this book. When I went into it, I did not want to jump onto the hate train. That was not my intention at all. I had high hopes for this, and I honestly think the world in this book had a lot of potential. There were some interesting things going on. I liked how the magic was the sort of clairvoyant, like mind mind powers. I really liked the original setup of it, but as the book went on, it was just one of those romances that was physical first, and physical in a way that I just personally don't enjoy reading about. Like, the writing style made me cringe, and some of the things that our characters were saying to each other made me cringe, and it just got difficult for me to read, like more difficult as it went on. I also think our protagonist was very frustrating to read. She was making these decisions that did not make sense whatsoever to me. Just a lot of cringy moments in this one. Moving on to the other side of the spectrum, let's talk about an unpopular book that I actually loved. I think we need to go with The Compound by Ashlyn Rawl for this one. This is a dystopian fiction. It follows a reality show set in the middle of the desert where we just have a bunch of contestants that like arrive at this house, and the show basically tests their limit of like what they will do for prizes. Like, how far will they go to get a new pair of shoes. I enjoyed this book. It wasn't my favorite book of all time. I think I rated it like a 3.75 or something around there, but I really enjoyed how much this book made me think. I think the purpose of this book was to just sort of give you the bare bones of this situation and give you a very simple plot to just help trigger kind of these thoughts, like a starting point for conversation in your mind or in a book club or whatever. I feel like this is definitely a book club read where like you can read it, talk to a bunch of people about it, and everyone will have these sort of different opinions and thoughts about it. From what I saw, I don't know anyone else personally who loved or even liked this book. I think pretty much everyone I saw gave this book a negative review, and so when I read it, I was very surprised at how much I liked it. Moving on, this one's a little bit of an interesting tag. So the highest rated book on Goodreads versus the lowest rated book on Goodreads that I read, and do I agree? So the highest rated, we've already picked up this book a couple times, but Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This has a 4.76 average rating on Goodreads, which is absolutely like insane. And I definitely agree. This was probably one of the best fantasies I have ever read, if I'm gonna be completely honest. It was just perfect. Like, I can't fault a thing about this one. And the lowest, Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. This is rated a 3.29 on Goodreads, and unfortunately, I also have to agree with that one. I think there's just a lot that this book promised and didn't give. So, I mean, the title is called Love in the Time of Serial Killers. The whole premise of it is that our main character moves into her childhood home because I think was it her dad who passed away? I think it was her dad who passed away or something. I read this like near the beginning of the year, but yeah, she moves into her old family home and then meets her across the street neighbor and starts seeing these like serial killer tendencies in him. Like, I think the first time she meets him, he's barefoot, and then the next time she sees him, he's buying all of these like suspicious things like plastic bags and rope and industrial cleaner and stuff like that. So she starts suspecting that he's a serial killer because she also has like, she's kind of a true crime junkie and she kind of studies true crime and stuff. So she is convinced he's a serial killer, but then she starts like hanging out with him more and like feeling this sort of chemistry with him. And for a book with a title and synopsis like that, there was very little actual like serial killer things in this book. Like, there was not a lot of serial killer in it at all, and I think it just did not deliver what it promised. I also really didn't like the protagonist because she was really into body shaming herself and others, and as someone who is honestly like a little bit sensitive to that, like that really triggers me because I've had a history with like body dysmorphia and everything. I could not read about that in this book. I did not like it at all. So unfortunately, I have to agree that this was the worst and this was the best. Next tag. This one is fun. So, favorite book quotes of the year. So first of all, Pierce Brown just has the most wonderful quotes of all time in all of his books. Like, his writing packs a punch. He knows how to put words together and throw them in a sentence for like the biggest emotional impact. But I really liked this specific quote from Morningstar. So, a man thinks he can fly, but he's afraid to jump. A poor friend pushes him from behind. He looks up at me. A good friend jumps with. And I feel like that is just the theme of this story. Like, I've said this before, but the friendships in this world, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, like the way you need to like learn how to trust others so they trust you and you can form these true bonds with people is just incredibly done in this book. And I feel like this quote really encompasses like, you know, a good friend jumps with. It just really puts like the feeling of these books into one sentence. So I really love that. And then another quote that I love from Beartown, who I think is another just master at crafting words in a sentence. together. I remember this specific quote really resonating with me like immediately, like when I read it. And I think I actually in my reading vlog highlighted this quote or like read it out loud in my reading vlog because it just really resonated with me that much and I took a picture of it. But it does not take long to persuade each other to stop seeing a person as a person. And when people are quiet for long enough, a handful of voices can give the impression that everyone is screaming. And I think this just like hit me so hard because it is so relevant to today with social media especially. I think you can really get the impression that the whole world has one opinion, like a very strong opinion, but when you look at it, it's usually just a few very loud people on social media that are posting and commenting over and over and over and over again. And you have to remember that social media is not life. Like there are so many people who don't use social media. There are so many people who watch social media but don't make posts or don't comment. And so sometimes when you see a lot of these loud opinions on social media, it's helpful to step back and be like, you know what? This feels like the whole world is feeling this way right now, but it's probably not the whole world. It's just a very specific group of very loud people. And so this quote really hit me hard. But okay, we have a few prompts left. The next one is the book I read this year with the most unique concept. This one is quite easy for me. I think it has to be The Names by Florence Knapp. I was just astounded at this concept. It's why I picked up the book in the first place, but this is a debut author as well. And the structure of this book is very interesting because we split into 3 different alternate parallel timelines. So at the beginning of the story, we follow a mother who is about to name her newborn son. And there are 3 options that she can name him. And so in this moment, we split into our 3 different timelines where she chooses a different name for her son. And we see how this one decision alters the course of all of their lives, like the whole family. And I think this was really, really well done. Like the premise was very good, but also the execution, because this very easily could have been a story that just was really on the nose. Like, oh, you name your son this, he's gonna be bad. You name your son this, he's gonna be normal. You name your son this, he's gonna be really good. It didn't follow that path, which is something I was a little bit scared of, but it was more nuanced than that. They were good and bad in every single timeline, and it just felt more realistic that way. The story overall, the book overall, is very sad. So I will give you that warning, but it was very beautifully written and I really enjoyed this one. And for a book that I would reread, I mean, I always want to reread books, but I feel like I never have the actual time to. But I really want to reread Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was like, honestly, I think my favorite read of the year, like #1 top read. And it was just incredible, beautifully written. Again, another book that just really captures love in all forms. But I want to reread this because I read this in a 24-hour readathon and I definitely absorbed a lot from it. But I kind of want to reread and take my time on the second read and just like slowly enjoy the process a little bit more. Another one that I'm actually currently active sort of rereading is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, actually. I read the entire first trilogy this year, you guys know that, up to Morningstar, and I'm gonna start Era 2 sometime like early next year. But I did hear from some people that the audiobooks for Red Rising are incredible because they're the graphic audios. And this year especially, I've fallen in love with rereading books through audiobooks. And so I've actually already started rereading or listening to the Red Rising audio graphic audiobook, and it's really, really good. I will have to say it's so good. I love like the addition of sound effects and like the multicast and the sort of like voice acting in it is really good. I think it really helps set you in that environment too, because for me as someone who is new to reading space sci-fis or like sci-fi in general, sometimes it's hard for me to like picture sci-fi environments. And I feel like just the addition of like music and sound effects in the Red Rising graphic audiobook is it's really, really like making the whole experience feel a lot more rich. So that is one that I've already started rereading. Is it too soon? Probably, because I just finished the original trilogy like in November. That being said, that was the last little book tag for this end of the year book tag. So that wraps it up for, what was it? Bookmas Day 9? Wow. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know what your book choices were for either all of the book tags or just like some of the book tags. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!